everybody. Welcome to the Saligo Technology Leaders Podcast. I am your host, Jordan. I'm joined by Mark Simon, the VP of Strategy over here at Saligo, my excellent co host, as well as Barry Enderwick, the genius and sandwich king behind the Sandwiches of History, Instagram, TikTok, Reddit, Patreon, YouTube, Facebook. You've probably seen him somewhere making sandwiches from history from about the 1850s on to, I'd say, about the 1970s. Not only does he know how to make sandwiches and sandwiches of history, but he is also an ex-Netflix executive responsible for a ton of their growth, and as well now works at Kaizen Creative Studios with some pretty interesting projects that he hinted at before the podcast that hopefully we can get into. Barry, welcome. Great to have you.
Thank you. Great to be here. Very excited.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
welcome. Thanks for joining.
Yeah.
So, Barry, you're a prolific man with a pretty prolific career. In doing some research, and I spent a couple hours of research because I wanted to make sure that guests had a pretty good idea of you and kind of your background, because I think it ties in to a lot of what you're doing on social media. But, there's this kind of like Silicon Valley, like the TV show, this ideal of early businesses that just got incredibly huge and now became an everyday part of our lives, whether that's Facebook, whether that's Netflix. What was it like at the early days of Netflix? Because you were there, if I'm correct, in the mailing DVD days.
That's correct. I was hired in April of 2001. They had just converted from a la carte DVD subscription for a la carte DVD rentals to subscription in probably about a year and 4 months before. When I joined the company, there was 150 people. We had layoffs, went down to 75 people. And it was quite exciting. It was an exciting time to be there. I mean, obviously when you're in the middle of doing something, you're not really thinking, you don't have a historical lens on it. So it was just, for me, it was like, I'm joining this startup during the .com implosion. And a lot of friends and family were like, "Are you really doing this?" And to me, yes, because I had actually experienced the product and realized how unbelievably customer centric it was, and how unbelievably diametrically opposed it was to Blockbuster and how they treated customers. So for me, it was very much I think this could eat Blockbuster's lunch, and it was partly a passion.
Interesting. I like to hear that. I'm sitting surrounded by a stereo from the 1970s. I have tapes and records, and despite all of that equipment and despite all of that hardware, I still use Spotify. I'm still using Bluetooth, and so I can kind of see why you adopted early on. In doing my research, you grew your subscriber base from 300,000, which is obviously an impressive number to start with, to 26 million, and that is a obscenely impressive number to end with.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously Netflix is different than Saligo, but I think as Saligo kind of grows into that massive enterprise scale, obviously we're B2B versus B2C. But I'm curious, like, what you picked up along the way. Like, not only what do you think drove such massive growth, other than it being a great product, but why?
Well, I think first of all, it was very much, again, positioned to be customer centric. Blockbuster would charge late fees, punish you if you were late. We let you keep 3 DVDs as long as you want. Shipping was included, so it's easier than going down to the stores. All those different reasons. But there are certain inflection points, and one of them was, and I think it was 2005. Up until a certain point, we had just been doing whatever it took to get customers signed up. We didn't really think about brand at all. And then around 2005, our VP of marketing, who then became CMO, Leslie Kilgore, decided we needed to figure out what our brand positioning needed to be. Who were we? Who did we need to be for people to say, yes, we'd like to give you money and we'd like to continue doing business with you? So we needed to figure out what role we played in people's lives. Why should they choose us as opposed to going to Blockbuster or a video store near them? And we did a ton of research with both customers, and because before we did the research, we did a survey with our members, and basically what they came back and said was, you're an efficient vending machine. And no one builds a brand relationship with an efficient vending machine, and someone could build a better machine, a more well-equipped machine. So that wasn't really going to be enough to hold on to folks. And so we did this research with our members and with non-members, and we realized that if we could occupy the space of movie enjoyment made easy in people's lives, if we could drive towards that in everything we did, in our language, how we spoke, how we visually represented ourselves, our service improvements, our ops, our customer service, if we could do that, we would actually have a unique space to occupy, and people would actually start to build a connection. And so we would do things like, instead of having people call to cancel, which was just absolutely the standard at the time, we switched to 2 clicks to cancel on the website. And people were just like, they were blown away. And on our exit surveys, likelihood to recommend and likelihood to return rates shot way up, because they couldn't believe that a company was just like, yeah, you're canceling, you've got your reasons, help us understand why. But when you come back, if you decide to come back, we'll have your DVD queue waiting for you. You don't have to worry about it, that kind of thing. And so you start to build this. And, the other thing is we were counter-positioned within the mailbox. If you think about it, everything you got in the mail was either junk mail or bills. And here's this red little present that comes. It's entertainment. And so people were excited to get our product in the mail as opposed to everything else that was in the mail. But for me, the brand research and figuring out who we needed to be and what we needed to solve in our customers' lives was a big differentiator, especially because we didn't actually make the content. There was no original content back then. It was other people's stuff, and we couldn't use that stuff. We had to get approvals to use cover art. That was the best we could do. We could not get actors. We could not get scenes. We could not get any of that stuff to work with because the studios all had it locked down.
Interesting. That's wild. Go ahead, Mark.
Now, Barry, you mentioned inflection points there, and this being one of them. When you were going through that at that point, when you're shifting to focus on brand, did you know that was an inflection point? Did you realize it at the time, or is it only something you see in hindsight? What was it like to actually go through that? Was it just another day in the life of Netflix, so to speak?
Well, I mean, to be honest, it wasn't. There's no guarantees, but I can say that our CMO, Leslie Kilgore, was nothing if not highly analytical and thorough. And so we did a thorough vetting of this concept and thorough vetting of the research to really understand that if we do this, this is going to be meaningful. Now, when I say we focused on brand, we focused on building a cohesive brand, one that like if you spoke to someone in customer service, you knew you were talking to someone from Netflix. If you dealt with someone in operations, you knew you were dealing with Netflix. Just to kind of create this cohesive brand, that was the idea. But in marketing, everything was measured, everything had to perform, everything. If somebody could spend money more efficiently in a different channel, it was shifted to them. There was no ego involved with it. Like I can't get trials for that CPA. Here, you take the $50,000 because you can get more. So we still were focused on the metrics, but the idea was while we're focused on the metrics, let's focus also on making sure that our messaging is right, our typography is right, our color is right, our tone and voice is right, so that we're fulfilling that brand position.
Awesome. It's a great answer.
You don't know 100%. Like I couldn't have told you when we were like, okay, this is our brand position. I could not at that point have said, this is going to work. I could say with a high degree of confidence, I think this is going to work because we've done a lot of research and we've done a lot of analysis on it. So, but yeah, it's tough to know. There are other moments in the company's history where you knew, like when streaming launched, it was just like, we knew that was going to be changing everything. And we knew that we were going to catch a lot of people by surprise.
That's awesome. So I'm going to change gears a little bit. Celigo is an integration platform as a service company, and we help businesses connect their applications. And something that I find interesting about Netflix from pretty early on is whether you had an LG or a Vizio or a Sony or a Pioneer or whatever you had, Netflix seem to value the importance of simple integration, where it's a similar UI, similar UX, and then you can pretty much access it. Obviously now with smart TVs, it's directly built in. Maybe 5 years ago, you had to use Amazon Fire Stick or like a Roku or something like that to make your TV smart. How did And obviously you're on the marketing side, so you're not in there building these integrations, but to what extent did you see them as important?
They were critical. I mean, I just did a post on LinkedIn not too long ago about the idea of strategy and using it. And Mark, I'm sure this will resonate with you, is the idea of using it as a way to keeping the company nimble and moving towards what's next. And what you're talking about there, where we were on Blu-ray players, smart TVs, everything that was coming out, that was a strategy of device ubiquity. And so what happened was streaming, when it launched, was only available on a PC. That was it. And then we moved and to be fair, like, the content wasn't great. The picture quality wasn't great, but we knew that we were going to be improving that as we went along. So as we did, then Mac came into the picture. Then we were on the next big three things that we could do, the PlayStation, Xbox, and Wii. And then the idea was, we're going to have to get into more people's homes. So let's build a Netflix box. Let's build a streaming player. And so we brought Anthony Wood in, the guy who invented DVRs, and had him in house, and he was designing this Netflix player. And we got down to the point where I was shooting promotional videos for it, and in Spokane, actually, and got a call back saying, "Hey, we have an all hands tomorrow with Reed," and where he proceeded to say, "We're not making the Netflix player because we want to be if we want to be on all devices, we can't be out there making hardware that competes with all devices." So that's how we're going to spin that out as part of Roku, and that's how the Roku player came to be. But the idea was get device ubiquity, and to your point of having it be, same interface. The idea was, this is Netflix. No matter where you are, we're going to have to make accommodations for certain devices, but no matter where you are, you needed to know that this was Netflix.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Mark, I'm sure you align quite a bit with the strategy side of that.
Yeah, definitely. So much of this reminds me of something that's always seemed to hold true, which is, if you move, oftentimes with a business, you don't know which direction to go at times, or especially at some of those inflection points where you don't realize, you're like, but if you move towards more agility or being more open as an organization, it almost always holds you in good stead. It almost always ends up working. Like, if you're more, whereas if you remove options off the table, that seems to, the outcome can differ a lot more. But if you trend towards that agility, you're constantly moving to be more flexible. It seems to, handle the ever-changing environment better.
Right. And that's one thing that impressed me about Reed and his leadership, was he was constantly trying to, like, here's what's going to be happening in the next 5 years. Here's what we think is going to be happening, and it's based on this data. So when I joined Netflix, he was already thinking about streaming. When we were doing streaming, he was already thinking about how do we expand it within the streaming space. And then once we expanded in the space, then it's like, how do we get to original content? There was this constant, like, we need to keep discovering move to what's next first, so that we can be ahead of the game. So
that's a really fantastic point. And Mark, kind of just, well, to what both of you said, is that's why Celigo, we have 200 integrations. There's no reason not to include a platform that someone probably wants to integrate or uses in some way. Just the more ubiquitous you can be, the more platforms that you can connect with or occupy. In the case of Netflix, just more consumers can be more happy. So that really resonates.
Yeah, at a certain point, it becomes like, if you've got like 200 integrations, then you start to get into how do you curate and facilitate, because that could possibly be overwhelming for someone to sift through. So it gives they're like, yes, you've got all these a huge number of integrations. Now you've got something else to think about next, if you don't already do it, in curation. So
yeah, where's the next problem? How do you keep striving for that better experience?
Right.
Ultimately, yeah.
So we kind of covered Netflix, and I want to switch to your current goal, which is Kaizen Creative Partnerships, which, when we were talking a little bit before, you said that it's a more fun, or a more modern, or a more updated version of videos that companies or trainees need to watch. And I'm sure I'm probably not phrasing that in your perfect marketing terms, but tell us a little bit about that and kind of how that's going so far.
Well, I would say Kaizen Creative Partnership is what we focused on primarily has been brand positioning, research-based brand positioning, messaging. We also do things like competitive analysis and things like that. But we're also creative. And so we've been, one of the projects we've been working on this year is some annual required training for a large company that I can't talk about. But it's the kind of required training that everyone sits through and everyone hates because it's terribly acted, it's poorly done. And our approach is to make it more like a Netflix show and make it more interesting and engaging and dynamic. And it's proven successful. My business partner did it for a different large company, and both have been written up in the Wall Street Journal. So
looks like I might have to renew that subscription and see if I can figure out who Barry's talking about.
I don't know.
Go ahead, Mark.
Barry, you mentioned brand positioning, and that brings up something interesting. And I wanted to ask you, in your experience working with that and across companies, when do you think an organization should focus on that? Because I've seen so many different approaches, right? I see some companies, they can have 5 people, 10 people, and they think about brand and they're really focused and they start building brand very early. And other ones just focus on product or their service, and they get out there to a certain scale and almost like, oh wait, and now we got to think about it, and it's this afterthought. How do you know when is a company to focus on brand? When's too early? When's too late? What's the right time to do that?
I mean, that's a good question, because you're right that people can get caught out. And to some extent, I see the argument for not worrying about brand if things are going gangbusters. For me, it's once a company finds product market fit, like there's a good inflow of customers, a decreasing outflow of customers, that's really a great time. And that's actually what we did at Netflix. We got to a certain point and it was like, okay, we're doing well. We're not, our churn rate is going down. Our customer acquisition rate is going up. Our CPAs are going down. Now we need to figure out what do we need to be so we can get to the next level, the next group of potential subscribers. So for me, it's once you have product market fit, because if you do it before you have product market fit, it's kind of a waste of money and a waste of energy and focus.
100%.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You end up building a brand for something that may not fit, or you end up building perhaps the wrong brand, and ends up being out of alignment with what your product ends up being to get the fit you're looking for.
Exactly. Yeah. And, the longer you wait to do it, the harder it gets, or the more expensive it gets. Right, because implementation of a brand repositioning at a larger company is going to take a lot of effort and a lot of time.
I think that's probably part of the reason that I was brought to Soligo. We had a pretty quiet presence on social media. And it's kind of been my goal to build out the brand voice, build out kind of like just what people think of Soligo when they're reading, watching, interacting. And it just rings true exactly to what you said. Yeah. I'm curious, from Kaizen Creative Partnerships, from Netflix, what did you learn kind of in obviously they're different businesses, but maybe what's like a lesson or two that you learned that you have brought into the social media world?
Consistency of application with regard to brand. So like Sandwiches of History, I've got a logo, I say certain things, I repeat those certain things, I post every single day at noon. So the idea is to be consistent and be thoughtful about how you put yourself out there in the world, and whether that's a company or Sandwiches of History or any of the other social media channels I've got. It's a matter of like, if you can do that, that's going to get you pretty long way if you can be consistent and be thoughtful.
That makes sense. And now that you say that, I'm really upset that after the intro to this podcast, I didn't say, let's give it a go. I really missed that opportunity.
That's okay. That's my job, not yours.
Thank you. I feel relieved. Another thing that you and I talked about when we spoke before this call about a month ago was, I said, Barry, it seems like you're not a businessman, you're a businessman. To quote the great Jay-Z. You run a Patreon, you run a merch store, you have a real job. You also make sandwiches. Sometimes you have to make like 7 sandwiches in a day to make sure that you have content. If you're going out of town, you have like 18 million different social media channels, followers that you got to engage and interact with. How do you manage it all? It seems tough.
My fiance might laugh at this in the other room, but I try to keep it somewhat organized. So, I have a routine. I get up at 5 o'clock every day. Some days I run, some days I don't. I go through the comments sections on all different on the different social media channels, and kind of react and respond and engage in that kind of thing for that. Then I work on actual editing, anything I need to edit for whatever social media channel is up next, Sandwiches of History, In the Chips with Barry, whatever it is. And then, by that time, it's probably 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. So I've gotten done a lot of stuff before I even think about doing my day job. And then my day job, since I'm a partner at Kaizen Creative Partnership, there's a lot of flexibility in that. So I can do some work for an hour, and then like for an hour and a half in the middle of the day, I can shoot Sandwiches of History video, and then go back and do work for Kaizen. So it's just a matter of blocking out my calendar for time, setting up checklists for what I want to accomplish for the day. Ideally the night before, set that up. But yeah, it's a lot of movement.
That's it's cool. I keep up with a lot of the channels, and it's just very cool to see someone being positive and engaging and just not making toxic content that actually probably like serves a better purpose in the world.
Thank you. I actually get that a lot from folks, that they're appreciative from for the respite from the typical, hey, look at me, and that kind of stuff. So
I have seen your dances. I have seen your dances at the beginning of In the Chips.
I do a little bit of that.
Go ahead, Mark. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
Well, I'm just thinking, Jordan, I'm not going to have much to say now when you're just like, all I ask is that you post something once a week. And I'm like, and so now I feel I'm going to feel even worse after I hear how prodigious Barry is, and when he's on the amount of content he's able to create.
I mean, to be fair, like when I left Netflix, I had absolutely no social media experience whatsoever. First of all, I left. I think Instagram started in 2012. Yeah, so that's when I left Netflix. I had been on Facebook, but I kept it private, just to friends and family. Twitter, I was way late to. YouTube, I hadn't done anything on. And so I started playing around with it and having fun, just trying to do stuff. And my friend's like, oh, you should. I used to review potato chips on Facebook for friends. And he's like, hey, you should do a vlog. And I'm like, okay. So I started doing one on YouTube. And then that's expanded now, to other things. But that was my first foray. And then I started doing Sandwiches of History. And I took the mindset of, I'm just going to do stuff I like to do. And if other people like it, cool. And if not, okay.
That's the way it should be. And Mark, this has just been an extremely long con to get you to post more on social media. Check that one off. Success.
Glad I could help, Jordan.
Thank you. And with that, so it's interesting, in doing a little bit more research, I saw that your original Sandwiches of History, you kind of tried it for a little and there wasn't much traction. And I don't want to use the word failed because that's a little harsh, but you took a respite and came back later to start posting on TikTok. And I'm kind of curious, like, was there some spiritual awakening? Did you learn something? Did you try something new? Like, what was the big difference that you think made you successful round two?
So one thing I've noticed is, one thing I noticed was that in order to get any traction on social media, I had to kind of experiment. So I actually need to rewind to In the Chips with Barry, because I did, like I mentioned, I started doing a vlog, and it was just 2 minutes of me rambling, and it was boring. And so I like, okay, well, you know what? I know Instagram a little bit now by this point. I'll go ahead and post on Instagram. Well, Instagram wouldn't let you post videos to the wall that were more than, I think it was 60 seconds.
Correct.
And so I started doing reviews that were 60 seconds, but it sounded like I was rushed and fast, and it was terrible. And then I hit on the idea of, well, I could just record what I record, cut it down and edit it together, really quick edits, and get to 60 seconds pretty easily. And it turned out it was hilarious. It was pretty funny. And it started to take off. So with Sandwiches of History, I decided, well, I'm going to try to do this differently, because now they have stories. I'll do the video and stories, and I'll do a photo on the wall. and it just sort of like, and I'm like, you know what? It's not working. TikTok comes along. I take the videos from the stories on Instagram, complete with the Instagram tags on them and everything like that, stickers, put them on TikTok. They take off like crazy. I'm like, I should do more of these because I'm just reposting old content. And so TikTok started taking off. And I said, well, wait a sec. Why don't I just take that same approach like I did within the chips and post videos to my wall? But the same thing happened and Instagram started to take off. So it's a matter of like, yeah, there was a hiatus for Sandwiches of History because I sort of forgot my lesson from In the Chips with Barry, which is if something isn't working, doesn't mean it's bad. It just means maybe you haven't hit the right way to do it.
That's a really good perspective to look at it. And I think that can, whether you're someone like me who's managing a company page, whether you're someone like Mark who's sharing things on social media, like awards that Sligo's winning, I just think that, sometimes you got to repackage. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think a lot of people are scared to try because if, they make a post and it doesn't get a lot of likes, you can feel discouraged, even though it's a vanity metric. It's kind of a bummer. And I've been posting every day on LinkedIn for 6-8 months now. And finally get like 3 likes on a post. I'm like, damn, like, what did I do wrong? Like, I thought this was a banger, but I guess not.
Yeah.
And so, just sometimes it takes quite a few tries and, repackaging is the way to go.
Well, I would say that doing social media on behalf of a brand is a bit tougher, quite a bit tougher than doing what I'm doing, right? Because I'm just a goofball making sandwiches, and there you go. I do it every day, and that's easy to do. For you have to try and figure out, what are the things that I can share that are going to be engaging, useful, and not just marketing materials. Which is, I see, one of the biggest fails I see on social media with regards to business is if it comes off as marketing, and it really needs to be more about the channel that you're in and what your brand position is, how those two come together, and then providing value if you can.
100%. Yeah. It's interesting because I've totally changed the brand voice of Sligo, at least on social. I mean, it's not like wacky or kooky or silly, but it's more conversational. It's more engaging. I don't want to say like slang, but maybe colloquialisms. And you feature people, you highlight employees, share recap videos of events that are edited to look at, edited together that look real nice. And in doing that, it just makes people like your brand. And one that I always think about is Docker, and they have their whale and they have this really cool art style, and they're constantly sharing things that aren't marketing or aren't a blog update. And of course, those things do need to be shared, but consistency is key, but also just being interesting and relatable. And I think I have to do that for a brand. You have to do that on all of your different channels, and it's a challenge. So, okay. Anyways, I'm talking about myself too much. Let me rein it back in. I have a few short questions that I'll kind of do rapid fire if that's okay.
Sure.
You've been interviewed by NBC, Taste, Epicurious, Mercury Gazette or Mercury News. I forget which one.
News. Yeah.
Mercury News. Do you ever feel, and again, I'm asking this because I wanted to talk about Netflix and I wanted to talk about Kaizen and I wanted to get to know you on a business and technology side first. But do you ever feel like pigeonholed as the sandwich guy?
No. Because no, I would say that's what I'm most known for right at this point in time. But for a long time, I was writing articles about Netflix and strategy and going around doing speaking engagements about Netflix and how we grew and that kind of stuff. So I was known for that at that time. So for me, it's just this is fun to do. Who knows? Maybe the work we're doing with Kaizen I'll be known for that. And I have other social media accounts too. So
that's true.
But I don't get recognized in public from those. So.
Have you been recognized in public for Sandwiches of History?
A few times in San Jose.
Awesome. Well, that's good to know. I'm glad you're gaining that fame, getting that
must
clout.
have been fun.
It's weird because I'm just a guy making sandwiches on social media. I don't think of it as like that big a deal, but people have been nice and some have been nervous and some want a picture with me, and I'm like, sure, why not?
That's good, man. I'm glad you're building your clout, as social media influencers say nowadays.
Oh, you know what? There's one other thing that translates from what I'm doing to marketing in general for companies, and that is highlighting customers, if you will. So like on in the Chips with Barry, what I used to do a lot more of, and I haven't done it in a while, is guest review Tuesdays, where basically people would do their version of In the Chips with Barry. I would introduce them, and then it would just be them, and they'd get the stage. And likewise, I think companies benefit from highlighting their customers and their customers' successes, not just with their product, but just in general, and bringing them in to feel part of the success of the company.
That's not only a really good way to kind of include them, but also a way that you don't have to make a video that day, which is probably a nice respite.
Yeah,
it kind of reminds me of rap in the 90s and 2000s, where every song would feature a different rapper, and it's like collaboration is really important, and it goes a long way, and it's cool that you do that, because it's nice to make the fans feel a part of it.
Right.
The next rapid fire question.
Yes.
What's your least favorite sandwich recipe, and why is it the shrimp and raisin sandwich?
It's not the shrimp and raisin sandwich. It's the there's a bunch of them that are just terrible, like the yeast sandwich, which was a compressed yeast cake, fresh yeast mixed with cream and then put on bread. Terrible. The oyster sandwich from 1909, which was chopped raw oysters mixed with olive oil and put on buttered bread. Like, I love raw oysters, not like that. So that was terrible. There was a goblin sandwich, which is I can't remember. It was donut was the bread cut in half, and you're like, hey, this is a great idea, and it is a
good
great
start.
Idea. Avocado, and then it just went downhill from there. It was not good.
Wow.
Mark, your lunch tomorrow might be an oyster sandwich if I get a hold of your ordering platform.
Well, that just sounded like a waste of perfectly good oysters, but
yes, I completely agree.
All in the name of sandwich science. So okay, we'll give Barry a pass for that.
Yeah, I did not.
As long as you're not recommending him.
No.
The next thing that my wife gives me trouble for is I have way too many condiments in the fridge. I know you're a condiment guy.
Yeah.
Recently, I've kind of gone on a kick. I've been using Calabrian chilies, which I love. Za'atar, the Middle Eastern seasoning.
Yep.
Salsa chiltepin, which is like a tiny bird's eye chili pepper salsa.
Nice.
Peanut sauce. I have way too many, but I'm curious if what are your, maybe not go-tos, but 3 unique ones that you have that maybe you haven't shared on Sandwiches of History.
Sure. Bomba sauce, which is the Calabrian chili sauce from Trader Joe's, but really any Calabrian chili, fermented Calabrian chili. Salsa matcha, which is made with a bunch of different chilies and nuts. And there's a recipe we follow from the New York Times cooking section that just makes a fantastic one. What else? I guess Japanese barbecue sauce, bachan. Ooh. That's quite good. It's a sweet, savory combination that's delicious. I love Crystal hot sauce. I love Frank's red hot sauce as well. Grillo's pickles.
Grillos are the best.
Bobby's boat sauce, which is out of Portland, is this. It's I don't even know how to describe it. It's really good. It's got ginger. It's got tomato. It's got chilies. It's really, really good. Bobby's boat sauce. I could keep going. I get in trouble for having too many condiments too.
It's a challenge we all face. Mark, I'm curious, any secret toppings that you use?
Oh, secret top. I'm not quite the same sandwich artist, but I like condiment. I like harissa actually.
Yes.
And like all the different kinds, like just you get into it, and they're like, some of them are so different than just like hot sauces. So I like the North African
nice.
version of hot sauce. That's my go-to.
Nice. Harissa is great.
That is a great call. A little out of left field, but I like it, Mark. So we've been talking for a while. I have 2 more kind of just rapid fire questions, and then I have kind of a slightly more serious one, and then I actually have a present for you, Barry. So just before I do that, Mark, I'm just curious, is there anything that I know I've kind of reined you out because I'm talking so much, but anything?
No, I want to get to it and see this present.
All righty. Okay, 2 more quick questions before the serious one. what's the story behind the shirts, Barry? You have a lot of floral patterns,
Yeah.
and they're super recognizable whenever I'm scrolling on Instagram. What's the story behind it?
I just in my life, not just sandwiches of history, but in my life, I am tired of the tyranny of plaid that is in men's dress shirts. That's all you see is plaids, stripes, solids, and it's like, give me something else. And so I have, with the help of my fiance, who has found a lot of these, have been seeking out dress shirts that actually have interesting patterns. Because I'm just so tired of same old, same old, same old. And ironically, the company that has the most of these types of shirts is Land's End. And you talk about the tyranny of plaid, they kind of own that. But every once in a while, they'll have a shirt like this on there, and you have to buy it quickly because it'll disappear quickly. And that's it's just, I don't know. I just want something interesting to wear.
I think they owe you commission for that answer.
Oh my God, I've sold so many units for those guys, and they know it. They know it. They owe me.
Tag them on Instagram.
I've tagged them on it. I've tagged them a lot of times and gotten no response. I'm like, they're like, why should we pay you? You do it for free. So,
all right. Well, with that, there's actually a question from my wife. I made my wife a caprese sandwich this weekend, and while eating it, she got really upset, and I was like, "What's going on?" And she said, "I can never get a sandwich to have the ingredients not fall out." And I'm curious, what am I doing wrong in making sandwiches that make the ingredients fall out? And do you have any tips for the sandwich makers out there?
Well, so caprese sandwich, tomato, basil, and fresh mozzarella, right?
I did arugula too.
Okay, good. I like that. The mozzarella, what size was the mozzarella you used?
Like, no. Oh, that's my problem.
Yeah, you use it. Basically, you need to have it so that the slices fit the bread, because otherwise the thing will just fall out. So if you're using the little balls, they're just gonna like roll out. So to me, it's a matter of layering and then using the and making sure the ingredients fit the bread properly.
That's that makes sense, because I actually made another one today, and I used a much bigger slice of tomato, used larger mozzarella, and like the song by Ludacris, there was no rolling out, which was nice.
By the way, I'm going to make a recommendation. You both need to try this sandwich. It's from Turkey and the Wolf in New Orleans. It's called the Tomato, and it is ridiculous. You look at the ingredients, you're like, okay, this is interesting, and then you taste it, and your mind is blown at how good it is.
I've seen that many times, and Mark, on your page, Barry, and yeah. Mark, I'll be sure to send you that recipe. Also, the head chef of Turkey and the Wolf was on Iron Chef recently, I believe, and I saw him, and I was like, I know this guy looks familiar, and I was like, oh, I've seen him on Sandwiches of History.
Yeah,
so excited.
He was on Iron Chef on Netflix. He didn't win, but hey.
Well, we have our homework, so I know what that is.
Yes. Okay, so let me round this out with a slightly more serious question before presenting you with this gift. I know we touched on this a little bit, but I'm a social media manager, and I think that a majority of social media is somewhere between unhealthy and toxic. I think LinkedIn is kind of a little bit separate because it's so business oriented, but there's problems with people's body images. There's problems with dietary advice. There's problems with just young children trying to become famous for doing dangerous or goofy or silly things. And obviously you're no part of that, which is nice, but I'm kind of curious, like, what's your take on that? And is there anything that you're doing consciously or maybe subconsciously to avoid negativity on social media?
Yeah, well, I'm definitely well aware of all the issues surrounding social media with regards to things that are going on with society and body image and that sort of stuff. What I try to do is just keep it positive. Like, don't get stressed out over whether a hot dog is a sandwich, because it doesn't matter. It's like, just don't worry about stuff like that. And if someone's negative in the comments, I can kind of tell if they can be brought around by how they write what they write. Sometimes there are people who write comments that are just absolutely terrible and they need to be blocked. And so I block them because I don't want to waste my time. But for me, I know that I know for a fact there are families watching, kids watching. And to me, that's a responsibility I have to make sure that I'm not off swearing and going crazy. Even, and I'm not against swearing in general. I do it for emphasis in real life all the time. But sandwiches of history, there's no real reason to, right? There's no reason to do that sort of thing. So I just sort of keep it positive, keep it light, and just try to be, kind of the mellow guy making sandwiches that you can just hang out with and have a sandwich at noon every day at noon Pacific time every day.
That's awesome, man. I love that, there's people out there working to spread positivity.
Yeah.
With that being said, let me see if I can get this presenting window to work. I'm going to share my screen.
All right.
And of course it's not letting me. Let's see. One sec. Sorry about this. And it won't let me. Well, I'll tell you what I am here to share with you.
Okay.
After doing some deep dive, sorry, technical difficulties happen. We're not all as good as Netflix.
Netflix is not always good. Come on.
Yeah, that's true. I've lucked out with them. But in doing a little social media stalking, something that I learned is you like to try meat substitutes. You're not a vegetarian, but you like to try meat substitutes.
Yeah.
And recently, not by choice, but by cholesterol, I decided to go vegan. Not vegan, vegetarian.
Okay.
And so I've been 6 weeks about at this point, and you crave meat sometimes. And
sure.
What I did was I created a tuna salad substitute that is banging, and I made an entire recipe for you. You are in no way obligated to make the sandwich. You are in no way obligated to share the sandwich, but if you do, I'll be watching.
Okay.
Let me just give you a quick rundown. You can tell me what you think, and then I'll be out of your hair and we can get back to it.
Okay.
You're going to take some sourdough. You're going to give it a pretty hard sear with a little bit of olive oil. So you got some nice crispy sourdough.
I like it.
From there, you take a can of garbanzo beans that are washed and drained, as well as one large avocado. You put them in a bowl and mash them up. Not too fine like blended guacamole, but not too chunky. You kind of want that tuna salad consistency. You're going to take some radishes, some green onions, and tomatoes and dice those pretty fine. In addition, you're going to take some mayonnaise, some Dijon, some relish, salt, pepper, paprika, and you're going to give that a mix. That's your tuna salad substitute, if you will.
All right.
You're going to top that piece of toast with a slice of sharp white cheddar cheese.
Okay.
Add your tuna salad mix. Top it with arugula. Give it a glug of olive oil, and crown your king.
Okay.
The top slice of bread. I'm just curious. First of all, the thoughts, and let me give you a plus up when after I hear your thoughts.
So, that sounds really tasty. I would like to try that. My fiance, who is vegetarian, almost vegan, makes something not exactly the same to substitute as well. She throws dill in, which is something you might think about as well. And the other thing is, why not put that cheese on top and make it a tuna melt?
I think you got it. I think that's 2 plus ups. Dill and a grilled cheese tuna melt. I like that.
Yeah. It sounds delicious.
Fantastic. I will send you the recipe that I have all the ingredients and the numbers that I've used.
All right.
Made the sandwich about 3 times. My wife absolutely loves it too. She's vegetarian. The plus up that I thought of is it's kind of an easy layup, but you got to add chips to something like this.
Oh yeah, chips. Yeah, chips would be good. Old Bay would be good as well.
Ooh, okay. Well, we're just creating recipes at this
I know.
point.
I can do this. Sorry.
With that in mind, I will be sure to share this Google Doc with you. I added a picture of the sandwich to prove that I not only made it, but it doesn't look disgusting. It actually looks very tasty.
It doesn't sound disgusting. I don't know why you would think that it would look disgusting.
I'm preaching to the sandwich king. I gotta stay humble over here. But with that in mind, I just wanted to say, Mark, as always, thank you for being an excellent co-host. Barry, this was a super interesting dive covering not only sandwiches and chips, of course, but also kind of your role at Netflix, your role at Kaizen Creative Partnership, which I'm really excited to try and figure out what videos for what company you're producing. I won't say anything about it, but I'm still interested. And I just wanted to say thank you very much for your time today. Just your participation, your general attitude, and the fact that you're kind of continually working not only to entertain people, but to do so in a positive way. So thank you so much for joining the Sligo Technology Leaders podcast. If you are out there and you haven't been made aware, this is Barry Enderwick of Sandwiches of History. You can find him on Reddit. You can find him on TikTok. You can find him on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Twitter. He has a Patreon if you're interested in really diving deep into the history of sandwiches. I could not recommend his page highly enough.
Thank you.
Yeah, Barry, thank you so much for joining us. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on and for all the kind words. That was I don't know what to say, but thank you. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun chatting with you guys.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again.
Thanks, Barry. It was a pleasure.
I'm going to end this recording, but to everyone out there listening, thanks for joining the podcast. Stick around for a sec, Barry, and then we can circle back. But everyone for listening, thank you. Have a great afternoon. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.